Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got week 1 of the TCG Matchmaking Power Rankings for the OP11 meta of the English version of the One Piece card game. And this is what I would consider the first full week of people playing on the rank ladder with not only the new OP11 cards, but also the new starter deck cards. We also did have a couple of events around the world last weekend, and I know we've got more in the future on this upcoming weekend. If you guys are going to be also in Vegas, let me know. I will be there, and if you see me, make sure to say hello. I've got some goodies for people who do so. But honestly, it's been very fun to test out what decks are viable and not viable. I think there has been a little bit of knowing what decks are good, but there's still a couple builds and a couple decks that are coming out of the woodworks that have been really exciting to see do well as well. So if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. We make a lot of One Piece content and I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want any of the data, deck list, or anything from this video, you can make sure to find them on my website, Eggman Events, which is linked in the description. We do have tournament data for the events that have already happened in this meta. We've got my own deck list, we've got the deck list from around the world, and also the power rankings, which we're looking at today too. So we're going to go over the power rankings specifically. We're going to look at the matchup chart that they've provided us, and we will be going over the top placing the highest win rate leader for each one of these leaders that are in the power ranking as well. And if you guys want more data, make sure to check out TCG Matchmaking. I really appreciate all they do. I would not be able to make this video without them, and I really appreciate the data that they provide as well. So jumping into the power rankings, we do have it here. So real quick to go over it, we do have kind of the match data, the wins and losses, and then we have the win rate and also the rating. So rating's a little bit skewed based on how many people are actually on the deck and how how many games it's actually played. If something has more matches, it has a higher rating just strictly because of that. And then if something has, there are decks like, for example, like Zoro has a really good win rate right now, 53% compared to 50.6, but the fact that it has less than almost 10% of the games that it has for Blue and Purple Luffy just means that it's a little bit more skewed and a little bit higher variance than something with almost 20,000 games. So of this power rankings, we do have the Blue Purple Luffy taking first spot. We've got Green Purple Luffy taking second, Betty taking third, Luffy Prime, I guess, Vanilla Purple Luffy on 4. We've got Bonnie on 5, Black and Purple Luffy on 6, Buggy on 7, Smoker on 8, Zoro on 9, and Teach on 10. So one other thing I do want to mention is that I think this meta is pretty open right now. I think there's a lot of decks outside of this that could be rotated into this top 10 right now. I think there's way more than 10 viable leaders in this meta. These are just kind of the ones I think that are performing the best in this current week too. So some other things to kind of note is that Black and Purple Luffy is kind of in a weird spot right now. And the reason I say that was it was the rank 1 last week, and now it's kind of on the rank 6, right? It is the second most played leader, I think, right now on the matches, but it does have a mildly abysmal win rate at 48.4. I do think a lot of people are testing out or trying it for the first time. It also is kind of in this weird spot where it was 6 spots into I think 5 spots into the Florida regionals, but did not perform at all in the Dublin regionals as well. So I think this weekend will be kind of a make or break on how actually good this leader is. Blue and Purple Luffy I think is in a strong spot, but it is a little skewed because more people play it. Green and Purple Luffy I think is in probably the easiest spot where it's just a solid deck. You know how it works, you know how the deck is built for kind of max efficiency within 4 or 5 cards, and it's just a solid deck to be playing right now. Betty's been, I think on the rise just because it's a really good aggro deck against some of these kind of purple decks that use their life as a resource or also kind of take a little bit of extra time to set up. And then again, I think the bottom 5 of this will be rotating quite often in the next couple weeks. So anyways, here are the 10 leaders that we're going to talk a little bit more this week as well. And let's quickly jump over to the matchup chart. So this is, again, just a picture of the dashboard that you get access to if you are a supporter on their Patreon. So make sure to check it out if you want. You can get a little bit more data and kind of scrutinize a little bit more of this data as well here. I'm going to also just zoom in just a little bit here. But looking through it, we've got, Blue Purple Luffy having pretty much some pretty solid matchups as well. Our roughest matchup is the Betty with a 33%. I know a lot of people are trying their best way to be able to tackle that matchup without having to sacrifice some of your others. Purple Luffy's a little bit tough but not unwinnable. Green Yellow kind of the same way. It's not in our favor, but we still find a way. Generally speaking, Blue Purple Luffy is just such a deck that if you're able to start getting your 8 Dawn loops, and by loops I mean just start using your leader effect every turn. Once you get to do that consistently, this deck kind of just goes off, right? The fact that you get 2 draws, the fact that giants in your arsenal, there's just so much stuff that you get to do that it makes it very, very difficult for a lot of decks to really overcome the amount of defense and amount of resources you have generating. So there is that. We do again have the new purple and black Luffy. So we've got some pretty kind of lopsided matchups, specifically like our Betty matchup's a little bit better, but Bonnie's pretty tough right now. We are pretty good into Law, into Buggy, and into the blue purple is kind of in our favor, but not like outrageously so. So I think that's something that's really interesting. Green purple I think is like the most consistent deck in this game. Once again, it doesn't really have any like super terrible matchups outside of Betty, which Betty is going to be tough, I think, for any purple Luffy. But other than that, as long as you dodge that, I think every other matchup in this meta is pretty winnable, which is really interesting. We've got Buggy, which is additionally like a little bit lopsided. If you're playing against like an aggressive Luffy build, such as purple and black and green and purple, that has a bit of an issue. Law and purple Luffy generally is also, again, these boards that just kind of spam out these bodies that are difficult for us to interact with is kind of tough. But yeah, just like a lot of, different matchups for that one. Teach is like a little bit like negative into a lot of like the purple Luffys, but outside of that, we're positive into most other decks in this format. Green Yellow Law, which was kind of on our matchup chart last week as well, and I know a lot of people are still believing in it, and I do expect it to be pretty present in Vegas as well. Our toughest matchups are Teach and the purple and black Luffy, and as well as the Betty and Bonnie. So not super good into those matchups, like Betty being a like 20%, just because we use life as a resource aggressively like we do. Like one Karasu is just really, really tough for us. So I think Law being so bad into Betty, and I think it's pretty difficult to not run into 1 or 2 Bettys during a run, might be enough for Law to not be too around, but we'll see. You've got purple Luffy, pretty standard actually on your matchups. You've got like some mildly bad ones, such as the green purple Luffy, Law, and but we do have such a good kind of matchup into Betty in comparison. I think part of the reason is that we don't have to take cards from our life as aggressively. We can be a little bit slower into it, and we can have more interaction, which is really nice. Betty itself has some great matchups into the top 3, but Buggy is really, really tough for it. The promo Buggy can really shut you down and prevent you from actually playing the game. Other than that, Teach is kind of like not in our favorite, but not too bad. And then, also Bonnie can kind of stall out the game enough for where you can get resources, and being able to like tap a card means you can remove it. And, Betty just kind of runs out of resources for that. So Bonnie is like actually pretty good. I've been playing a couple games with it, and I'm kind of surprised by how much I've been kind of liking it. I think there's ways to kind of declump your hands a little bit more often in this meta. So our only bad matchups right now are going to be the Teach and the blue and purple Luffy, but the rest of them I think are mildly in our favor, which is really nice. Yamato also kind of newer on the scene with the new support from the star decks. Also was in our weekly power rankings last week as well. But we've got a positive matchup barely into blue purple, so I'd say pretty even, honestly. And then we have a bit of an issue into most of the other purple Luffys, so that might be enough to keep it down. But again, having a mildly positive matchup into the most present deck in the format does help you out. Smoker, I'm pretty surprised about these data points, right? The fact that all of these decks are in your positive, right? Our only rough matchup is Betty, but not even by that much, only like a 40-60 instead of like 25 or whatever we see for these other ones. Our only other matchup is Yamato, which again won't be too present. So that's something that's really surprising. I've been playing a little bit of it. It did get a top 4 finish this past weekend in Dublin as well. So it's been around. It's a deck that I tried out also this week, and I didn't really see the power for it, but you'll see the deck list that we're going to talk about today. It's instead of like kind of an 8-drop kid build, it's more just kind of an aggressive build, which I think is probably the best way to build Smoker right now. I think you just can get there. So other than that, we've got some red decks. We've got Shanks, which again, having a 31% win rate into blue and purple Luffy, I think it's just enough to like cement that it's not very viable right now. Unfortunately, just like one matchup like that makes it really tough when it's going to be really, really tough for you to dodge like more than 2 blue purple. Yeah, just to be able to get through a tournament without seeing at least two copies of blue purple Luffy is just really tough. And then Zoro, not too bad. I think their only rough matchup is Buggy, again because of that promo, which otherwise, Buggy, I think you will probably see about 1 per tournament, so that's fine. That will be your 1 loss. If you can win out the rest, you're in a pretty good spot. So that's the matchup charts. Again, thank you again for TCG Matchmaking for providing this. And let's go to the highest win rate leaders on for each one of the top 10 leaders for this week. So we're going to start off with the blue Blue and Purple Luffy. I would say that the build for this deck is pretty cemented. There are just a couple copies of like tech choices for us. I think one in this deck in particular is the 8-drop Luffy. This card's not bad, right? It's pretty okay in the fact that it does offer some ways for removal. Being able to bounce cards back into your own hand is really nice. There's some like kind of weird spots where, for example, I attack with my Bond Clay, and then I want to put it back into my hand, and it lets me kind of do like a trash one, draw one into a 1k counter by getting rid of like a dead card in my hand, which is really nice. So I think Luffy's really good for that. We do have like Pudding, we've got Nami, we've got like our removal cards, we've got our healing cards, we've got one copy of the 9-drop Luffy, and then kind of just our events as well. So a good amount of events. Only one red rock is a little bit silly to me. I think we could probably try to bump it up to 2 copies. And then also we've got like our Gum Gum Giants, our Gear 2 Thunder Bagua, and then God Thread as well. So I've been really liking this card more and more as we've been going through this meta. The fact that it gets rid of a 5 or less is great. If this got rid of a 5 or less original cost, I'd definitely play it. The fact that it can't get a Sanji Pudding, if they have the Merry-Go, is a little bit upsetting, but just like a way to like activate Dawn, and also the fact that we have like 5 cards in our deck that ramp from our life. There are so many games where if it's like the top card of our life is God Thread or Thunder Bagua, we just win. Like it's I don't even like, I've had so many games where I've hit that, I'm like, I've lost already. I guess I'll play out the game and it'll be like 30 minutes of my life, but like I know that I'm gonna lose this one. So having 5 copies of those kind of triggers really help you a lot. You can also play like the 0 cost Gum Gum Jet Gatling as well, also has the same trigger, which can be good. And yeah, it can be really, really demoralizing when that happens. But I think this deck is obviously really strong. I think this is a bit of an adjustment period since it's really specific on matchups and how to get the most amount of value, but I do think that it's going to continue to do well and probably get better throughout the next couple weeks as well. So there it is. Next up, we got Green Purple Luffy. Again, the standard, I would say like the easy choice for any Purple Luffy enjoyer right now. The deck is pretty understood at this point. The way you build it is good, and like the play style is, you know, you still have to play and make decisions, don't get me wrong, but it's mildly linear in this current state compared to like other decks at other times. So we're not really changing anything. I think the biggest thing that I've seen in the last couple of weeks is people are leaning towards 3 copies of Luffy Taro compared to the more general 2 copies that we saw in the EBO2 meta. Other than that, I think that the deck is just solid. We play our Straw Hat cards. Zoro is a bit of a tech card. You know, people are playing Frankie a lot more often because there's more ramp around. So this just gets you some free ramp, and especially like if you're playing against any other Purple Luffy, besides a Green Purple Luffy, they're going to ramp just as much, if not more than you. So because of that, you get all that free Dawn to be able to get to the, you know, 8, 9, 10 Dawn turns end game pretty consistently. So not much more to say. You guys know what this deck looks like, and there it is. Next up, we've got Betty, and Betty's been pretty solid, I think, in this format. It hasn't really changed at all, which is kind of the silly point, right? We've been seeing people play this build pretty much since OP09, right? When we got like the Kuma as well as the Karasu as the kind of new ads for this deck, kind of like the yellow side, when this has been mostly like a red deck for most of its life. So this did do pretty well this weekend. It did win the Dublin regionals this past weekend too. So I do think that it's a deck that's present in this meta. It's one that you have to be really aware of as like the blue purple Luffy. It's kind of like the opposite side of the same coin, right? In the fact that like that deck is like super late game, gets control, like never runs out of value. Meanwhile, Betty's like, yeah, we run out of value, but you also run out of life. So we end up winning a lot of the time. So the only kind of tech cards that I see often is a cow. If we play 8-drop dragon or not, if that's a consideration. I've been seeing people play some of the general headquarters just to help you find Karasu a little bit more often, and your cards to help support that. I've been seeing people play a couple copies of the tension hormone too. There are some like weird turns, especially like if you go first, where you just actually don't want to put your 3 Dawn on your leader. Like it doesn't really matter that much. You'd rather play like an Emporio off your life, or sorry, this being able to hit off life to be able to play like Emporio or something is great. Being able to use this to, play this early, and the next turn you can make it a 7k and then play out something. Like there's a lot of synergy combos I think you get because you kind of get to cheat out one of these bodies. It is at the cost of another card from your hand, and cards in your hand are a bit of a resource in Betty, but if your opponent passes with 3 Dawn open, be careful. There's a good chance that they're going to be able to kind of develop the board quite a bit. So other than that, I think Betty's going to be quite present right now, and I do expect it to get a couple spots in most events for this format. So there it is. Next up, we got Purple Luffy, and this deck's been like through the ringer, I would say. You know, it was kind of like the Luffy Taro deck when it did get its new star deck back at the end of October, and now we just don't even see that card in the build anymore. So I would say that this was a deck that did well at the end of OP10 for the Japanese, sorry, OP11 for the Japanese meta, and mostly just the fact that we are just like a value-based deck that gets just a lot of late game value, and honestly, like we just get to take advantage of this 8-drop category, unlike a lot of other decks. I feel like most decks get to take care of it, you know, get use for it, but like we get to get a lot of use for it as well. So we're a bit you know, more aggressive leaning. We do eventually run out of value, unlike the blue and purple Luffy, but we're at 5 life instead of the you know, general 3 that they have. We're a little bit more greedy and aggressive for our ramping. We're just also like way more consistent because our ramping is based off our leader ability, and we get that card draw as well. So all of that just makes it very easy for this Luffy leader to get to, you know, 8, 9 Dawn a little bit earlier than most other decks. And then because of that, we are able to use Katakuri, Sanji, Lin, 9-drop Luffy, I think at like max value to help you get there. So, you know, most people, you know, and I think the other thing is that, yeah, so many people play this deck and like, I can't, you know, can't get Luffy Taro to work correctly, and it's just like not worth you know, taking 2 cards of my life to like whiff with it. So I think Katakuri as a 1-card combo instead of a 2-card combo is just so much better in those situations and help out the deck quite a bit. So the fact that also means that you can play like a 9-drop Lin or Luffy and then attack, and then like you get the Dawn back at the end of the turn, which means that you start the turn at you know, end the turn at 10 Dawn, you can use a giant, go back down to 8, and then you get the full 10. Yeah, Katakuri is just super cracked in these builds for Luffy. So I do expect this deck to still get some presence in the next couple bits, and there it is there. Next up, we've got Bonnie to kind of round out the top 5, and I've been really liking this deck personally, and I know I'm gonna dislike it as soon as I start liking it too, but I do think that the star deck has been generally better received than most people would say, right? There's a lot of good cards that we get from it. The thing is that like there's nothing that's like amazingly good, right? There's nothing that's broken. You just got like a lot of like tiny upgrades for a deck that was already pretty good. So I've seen people like not use this card, and I think it's a mistake. I think this card is really good at like 3 or 4 copies. Just like having a backup way to be able to use Dawn, it's really tough to interact with this card in like Hody Jones, right? Like there's a lot of like counter plays that this card lets you get around just because of how on your opponent's attack you can trash it. Like it just has like really good synergy with this leader in particular. So because of that, I do think that it's been really strong. There are some like kind of weird turns where you can play 8-drop Kid to play it, and then, you know, like if you're at like 9 Dawn, you use 8-drop Kid, you play this, you put the Dawn underneath Kid, and then you can have 1 Dawn open if you really need it in some situations. We also have like the new Bonnie from EBO2, which I haven't been seeing this card as much, but not a terrible card to, you know, up your one of your opponent's rested characters will not be active in your opponent's next refresh phase, and then you get 1 Dawn active at the end of your turn. So that's been, you know, it's not too bad of a card there. You're being able to like stun like a 9-drop Lin or Sanji or just a lot of other things. I think this Bonnie's like fine for just a card that also has counter in a deck that is kind of infamous for having no counter in hand. Other than that, I do like the X-Drake. There is also like the 4-drop Basil Hawkins that people play. It's just like a backup copy of Uruj. That's also a 2K. I really like this 2-drop Beige. I don't care that I'm not getting like a +1 in card advantage or anything. I'm really just making sure that I get my, you know, one of these 3 Hodies in my hand out of my hand, which is really nice. So I've been really enjoying this deck. It's great off of Kid if you don't feel like you need to play Rosinante, and you get a lot of benefit for it. So other than that, I think this deck is in like a pretty generally good spot, right? It's always been pretty present since it came out a year ago in OP07, and I think the boost that it got from the star deck was nothing outrageous, but helps keep it kind of relevant in this format as well. So we do have the 10-drop Law and Beppo. I still don't know how I really feel about this card. I think it's fine, but not like outrageously good. And if you like Doflamingo more, or if you like some other 9s and 10 drops, you can definitely kind of sub it in, but the fact that it is searchable is kind of nice. So here's the build here for Bonnie. Next up, we've got Purple and Black Luffy, and I've been seeing a lot of different builds kind of fly around for this one. Again, this is like the new Purple Luffy on the block with the new support that it got, so it's going to be kind of tricky for people to kind of be solidified on what their builds look like. I think most people are saying that, you know, both 6-drop Luffys, I've been seeing more people call this the Mug Luffy, and also the 6-drop Secret from EBO2. Both these are just really great, and you get kind of max value from this deck for both those, so that's really strong. Sanji's been good. I've been seeing people play like 8-drop Katakuri. Most people I've been seeing are off of the 5-drop Sanji, which you generally gets a lot of benefit for this deck, but I do think like it's a brick in the mid to late game at times. And so because of that, you know, I think it's like it's only good like on curve if you don't see one of your 6-drop Luffys, in my opinion. So taking that card out of the deck I don't think is too terrible. 9-drop Luffy, I've been playing a lot of builds with like 8-drop Katakuri, and I think there is like a way to do so, but it gets a little bit clunky at times. And so I do think like just playing 9-drop and saying, you know what, I'm just attacking face, you're always going to be they're always going to be attacking like a 7k or higher kind of body in the mid to late game, as long as you get your 6-drop Luffy. And so because of that, the 9-drop, you're really not afraid of that card being removed, and it gets more and more value every turn that it's on the board, which is really nice. So we do also have some tech cards, right? We've got like our Searcher's Giant, we've got like a Gatling, we've got Gamma Knife, which is searchable off the Law and the 1-drop Searcher. We've got Top Knot. We also can run the Gum Gum Lightning if you want something a little bit more searchable, but this does have a mildly better activate main, or sorry, mildly better trigger effect. The fact that you are able to you know, get something on the bottom, like the fact that it gets around KO effects is good. So you know, there's nothing like crazy. I know some people played this card and they played like Toy Soldier to get things into range. I don't think it's that big of a deal, right? It's pretty much for getting rid of like Rebecca's and other blockers, which I think that's good. I do think like Top Knot, like Gum Gum Lightning's better at getting rid of like specifically 6-drop Sanji, which I think that card can sometimes show up against specifically like Green Purple Luffy and others. So that might be better. It also can get rid of like Nami blockers. So I personally like Lightning just a little bit more, even though like the trigger effect is a little bit less good. But I think both cards are viable depending on which one you like. So it's really whatever you kind of want. But by and large, I think this deck is really viable right now. It's going to be interesting to see what kind of builds are the ones that really kind of stand the test of time. And here is the current one here. Next up, we've got the Buggy leader, and I think people have been kind of mellowed out on how this leader is and how it performs in this current meta. I do think the deck is still really good, and we do have like it's kind of like a gatekeeper for kind of like the upper echelon for this format. If you can answer this deck, I think you're in a really good spot. And if you can't, you've got some weird matchups in the next little bit. Obviously, most of it revolves around how affected you are by this card specifically. The fact that this can just shut off decks like Zoro and Betty is really devastating for those ones in particular, because otherwise they have like a mildly good matchup spread, and so having such a like, you know, 20-80 matchup just randomly appears is really tough if you're one of those players. So other than that, like the other deck is that I think that this also helps keep like Rob Lucci at bay a little bit. Specifically, Croc and Mihawk is such a good card. There's also like the Teach leader, which you get less on play effects, but you still get to put bodies on the board that are just really difficult to interact with. I think most people are still on the 4-drop Buggy. I get kind of comments about this card like every week about why are people playing this card. It's not that good. It's just kind of mid. It is kind of mid, but like it's still good enough for this deck. I think most people have kind of agreed on that. We have room for a couple of extra cards too, or sorry, some event cards too. So we got Cross Guild and Sanji's Peel Off. I've been seeing people put like Sables, Red Rock also. I think there's just kind of room for whatever kind of tech card you think is best for whatever you think you're going to see. I do like having the pudding in the deck. Most people don't play around this card, even though we can run it, so that can catch some people by surprise. And otherwise, I think this deck is in a mildly good spot. So not much more to say, but here is the build for Buggy. Next up, we've got Smoker. And again, we did get a top 4 Smoker in Dublin this past weekend. And this is a completely different build from that one. I would say that one is like a little bit more defensive leaning. You're defending 8-drop Kid very prolifically, and then you try to just kind of get to game because of that. This one is just like we are playing red straw hats, green straw hats, a little bit of this, you know, these Smoker and Tashigi things, and then hopefully we found a Hody sometime during that to be able to go to game at the end of the game. So I do think that the Mulgun is a really good card. I would still kind of want to see like a copy or two of Honesty Impact. Just the fact that that card can get rid of an 8-drop Katakuri is very strong, but we do just kind of prioritize a lot of our rush cards. We've got a lot of these Namis for consistency, right? We've got 16 different searchers, right? We've got these Namis which can't find Namis, right? So I actually think these might miss quite a bit because they're immediately what 8 cards you can't find with it, so they're only searching for 18. That's probably good enough. We've got Kujaku, which looks for Navy cards, so it's looking for 15 copies of those, or sorry, 16 copies of those, because it counts the leader for this one. And then we also have Virgo, which looks for Punk Hazard. So like the ratios are like to a point where like all of your searchers should likely hit from where they're at, but it is kind of tight, and I wouldn't be surprised if you miss a search here and there, which is mildly devastating for a leader like Smoker. But we're just trying to be very aggressive, and if we're able to get to that, like, you know, put your opponent to 1 life very early, we can really take advantage of it. So it's interesting. I'd have to try this deck more. I know a lot of people have been believing in this deck. I think I put it like an experimental in my own tier list just because I haven't seen it do that well in Japan, and it wasn't a deck that I had, you know, a lot of experience with doing well with. But that can also just be me, and I can definitely be wrong, and I'm open to that too. So we'll see if Smoker is able to, you know, persist throughout these weeks. And here's the build for this one. And then we've got Zoro. Is that the last deck we've got? And then Teach. Okay, so we got Zoro though. Honestly, there's not much to talk about, right? We've seen this deck, right? We've seen what the animal package does. We've seen this since OP08 when the Tony Chopper came out. I do think that Zoro does really, really well in the beginning formats, just because a lot of decks are suboptimal. People kind of figure out how their best plays work and everything. And once people figure that out, this deck is usually kind of dead in the water against a lot of different decks, including, again, a really bad matchup into Buggy. So, but I think, like, yeah, first couple weeks, Zoro's in a good spot. I think that like aggressive leaning red decks do have some really good matchups into some of these Purple Luffys, which is really nice. And you know, even though your opponent like draws 2 cards a turn, like the amount of like removal you have is great. The fact that you have ways to bypass blockers is really good. Though Giant is still like a really fantastic card that we have to like really be, you know, cognizant for. So other than that, I think Zora's in a good spot, and again, we should see some in the next couple weeks. And then lastly, we've got Teach, and kind of like the inverse of Zoro, where Zoro I think is really good at the beginning weeks of a format and then kind of tapers off. Teach is like really, really tough to play efficiently in the beginning weeks of a format, but then as people get more and more understood, as the meta becomes a little bit, you know, less wide generally, that's when Teach I think is able to get its full optimization, right? You really need to know what your matchups look like. You really need to know like what card, you know, if we discard a card right now, what are we shutting off on our opponent's on play side? We do have some new cards, which I think generally speaking, this is like pretty close to a perfect build and like a perfect 50 for what I would run in this format. The only thing I would say outright is that maybe I would try to add a couple Tempest Kicks to help us with our 7-drop Teach, but the new 6-drop Kuzan is really good. 6-cost blockers are kind of weird to remove on like these end game scenarios, so I think this is pretty good for us. The 7-drop Teach is great, and there are some really good combos if you go on like the first curve or even second, right? You can play 5-drop Kuzan, you can play Teach afterwards, and then you can play like Von Augur to get like the chain removal for something that cost 6 or less, which is really great. And then being able to continue to do that, I think is helpful. I do think like 10-drop Teach is still really strong, but it might be a card that we go down to 3 copies of in the future. We got My Era Begins, we've got Black Hole, and yeah, again, we do have like a new 2K on the block with the Caribou. Being able to use this to be like a 1-cost blocker that's kind of difficult to interact with is really nice, and can, you know, just the only bad thing about this card is it's not searchable, right? It's not a Blackbeard Pirates, which is kind of tough. So other than that, I think that Teach is kind of solidifying to what its builds kind of look like. I think, you know, deciding what cards are worth being played from the Star Decks, spoilers, it's the super rare ones, and our new 2K off the Devon, since it's slightly better than Shiryu. And I think all that just helps the deck a lot. So one thing I will say is that I feel like Burgess is in like the worst spot it's been. If you're playing against like specifically the like blue, I haven't really played a lot of this matchup with like blue Purple Luffy, but you know, this card is like, there's so many outs. I feel like blue's kind of more present a little bit, or like ways to remove this card kind of uniquely, and because of that, it's been like a little bit power crept for it. But I think we're still in a good spot. It's just like the fact like this Kuzan has protection, and then like this one has like mild protection with this on KO, and even like this Teach being able to add any black card from your trash to your hand is so good if they try to KO it. So I think this deck's going to again be better as we keep going into this format, and I'm looking forward to seeing if that's true or not. So other than that, that's going to be it for this video. Again, if you guys want to see any of the deck lists that I've been curating for this format, you can find them on my website. And then we have the TCG Matchmaking Power Rankings page, which has this week and last week as well. So not much more to say. If you guys are going to be in Vegas, let me know. I do have some goodies for anyone who says hello, and I'm looking forward to seeing what that tournament looks like. And I've been really enjoying testing this format. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you for watching, and we'll catch you all next time.